You felt it before. That spark, that flicker, a glance that lingers too long, a smile that feels carved just for you, a voice that says exactly what you needed to hear, almost too perfectly. It feels warm. It feels real. It feels like trust. But something's wrong, and you don't see it until the moment passes. By then, they already have what they wanted. Understand this. That wasn't charm. That was precision. The dark empath doesn't chase you. They pull you in. They don't push, they don't beg, they don't flaunt. They mirror. They speak your language. They echo your wounds. They offer you shelter, while quietly rearranging the furniture of your mind. You don't hear the door close. You don't notice the lock click. You only realize the cage exists once it's velvet-lined, comfortable, and already shut. This is not the cruelty of the narcissist, not the blunt edge of the manipulator. No, this is colder. Because the dark empath understands you, they see you in full, your wounds, your light, your history, and still choose to use it. This video is not a warning. It's an initiation. You're not here to learn defense. You're here to learn transformation, to become what the world has no defense against. A presence that comforts, then consumes. A smile that saves, then sways. Not rage, not cruelty, but silence. Study. Precision. Ask yourself, who profits from your softness? Who benefits when you hesitate? Who gains when you keep forgiving what should have been buried long ago? The truth is brutal. This world does not reward kindness. It punishes it. Empathy, sensitivity, vulnerability. These were once virtues. Now they're seen as liabilities. The ones who feel deeply are the first to bleed. But what if that sensitivity didn't make you weak? What if it became the sharpest blade you carry? That's where the dark empath is born. Not as predator, not as villain, but as survivor. Someone who felt too much for too long until the heart hardened into iron. The dark empath walks through the world like a mirror, reading wounds behind smiles, sensing fear behind threats, detecting emptiness behind boasts. But unlike before, they don't get pulled into the chaos. They don't drown in the feelings of others. They stand still in the storm, immune, observing, untouchable. They endure emotions. They do not exploit them. They carry the storm in silence. And when they enter a room, they already know what everyone else is hiding. That is a terrifying power. You don't become this by choice. You become this because kindness failed, because honesty was punished, because loyalty almost destroyed you. So you stopped explaining. You stopped proving. You stopped bleeding. Now you observe. You absorb. You adapt. You control your empathy, not to manipulate but to survive. Because the more you felt, the more you suffered. So you stopped asking to be understood, and began understanding everyone, trusting no one. The dark empath is not heartless. They're someone who buried the part of their heart that kept being stabbed, and once you bury it, you don't dig it back up. You rise, not to dominate, but to survive without breaking again. You don't announce your rebirth. You don't post it. You don't preach it. You simply become someone they can no longer access. That's the rise of the dark empath. Not with chaos, not with cruelty, but with cold, beautiful clarity. Fairness is a leash. Mercy is a trap. Hesitation is suicide. You stop defending your kindness. You stop giving endless second chances just because you can trace someone's pain. Because one day you realize, just because you feel someone's pain doesn't mean you have to carry it. That's the turning point. You've always seen through people. Their lies, their loneliness, their fragile joy. It was loud to you even when hidden behind smiles. Before that gift made you vulnerable, you used it to heal, to fix, to love, and you were drained, used, bled dry. not always by evil people, sometimes by desperate ones, but the effect was the same. You gave and they took, again and again, until one day you didn't break. You hardened. That's the shift. That's when the empath evolves into something else, sharper, quieter, deadly precise. But don't misunderstand. You don't become the villain they whisper about. You don't manipulate, you don't deceive, you don't scheme. You simply stop bleeding for people who never bled for you. And that silence is terrifying. You start watching more than speaking. Listening not to comfort, but to remember. You stop calling people out. You let them reveal themselves. You don't argue. You vanish. You don't chase closure. You close the chapter yourself. Your empathy becomes radar, not to heal, to anticipate. You detect lies before the lips can form them. You feel the flattery before it turns to poison. You sense the manipulation like a storm front, shifting the air. You walk into rooms and know exactly who's pretending, who's plotting, who's drowning in their own secrets, and you don't flinch, you don't expose them, you simply adjust. That adaptability, your silence, your control, that's what makes you powerful. Not because you play games, but because you no longer allow anyone to play them with you. You stop needing approval. You stop sacrificing sanity for belonging. You belong to yourself now. And that is dangerous, because the world is filled with performers, addicted to attention, desperate for validation, controlled by their need to be liked. But not you. You've trained yourself to thrive in silence, to remain calm when provoked, to walk away with dignity rather than cling with desperation. That is the true threat. Because nothing terrifies the weak more than someone who cannot be guilted, cannot be shamed, cannot be manipulated through kindness or connection. They'll call you cold. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. And they're right. You've stopped sacrificing your soul to make others comfortable. The dark empath doesn't destroy with emotion. They survive with it. They don't weaponize empathy. They wear it as armor. They still feel deeply, but only for those who've earned it. They still connect, but never at the cost of themselves. That is why they're feared. That is why they're untouchable. Because in a world where sensitivity is exploited, silence mistaken for weakness, and kindness seen as a tool, the dark empath doesn't just survive, they transcend, immune to guilt, immune to manipulation, immune to the endless noise of the needy. And once you reach this state, once you accept not everyone deserves your light, you don't just survive the world. You walk through it like a shadow, untouchable, unbothered, unshaken. Because nothing is more dangerous than someone who feels everything, but obeys none of it. You're not heartless. You've simply stopped broadcasting your heart to people who treated it like a doormat. You're not cold. You've just stopped burning yourself alive to keep others warm, but the world won't see it that way. When you were open, forgiving, endlessly available, they praised you. They called you pure. But the moment you drew boundaries and the moment you stopped explaining yourself, the moment you said no, suddenly you were arrogant. Suddenly you were cold. That's the paradox of the dark empath. You feel everything. You understand everyone. But no one truly understands you. And that's not an accident. That's design. Once you've been burned enough, you stop broadcasting your soul. You let them guess. You let them project. Their assumptions reveal them, not you. They call you mysterious, distant, dangerous, good. Let them. The more they underestimate you, the more space you have to move unseen. The more they project, the more they reveal their own weakness. And the less they understand you, the more power you hold. Because here's the truth. Power isn't in being seen. Power is in being unreadable. People fear what they can't categorize. And the dark empath belongs to no category, not manipulator, not fool, not cruel, not weak, silent, precise, unreadable. You sit in rooms where everyone's pretending to be confident, pretending to be happy, pretending to be in control. And you see through it all. You know who's lying to themselves, who secretly resents you, who smiles only to disarm you. And instead of confronting them, you watch. You collect data. You let them bury themselves with their own performance. That's your power. You're not trying to prove. You're not trying to fix. You're not trying to be liked. You're playing a different game, one they can't even see. It's not about domination, not about control. It's about liberation. You've freed yourself from the need to be understood, and in doing so, you've become immune. Immune to praise, immune to insults, immune to opinion. They don't know you. They never did. And now, they never will. Because the dark empath is a paradox they cannot solve. Soft, but untouchable. Kind, but unyielding. Emotional, but never controlled. You walk alone, not from hate, but from clarity. Not everyone deserves access to you, and being selective in a desperate world, that is revolutionary. Let them call it arrogance. Let them say you've changed, because you have. You've changed in the most dangerous way possible. You feel everything, and you owe nothing. You see the knife before they draw it. You feel the shift in the air before the words turn poisonous. That is emotional intelligence in its final form, not softness, not fragility, but strategy, survival. And make no mistake, the world only praises empathy when it serves them. When your insight heals others, they worship you. When your kindness bleeds for them, they applaud. But the moment you use empathy for yourself, the moment you turn that vision inward to build boundaries, self-respect, and sovereignty, they no longer cheer. They fear, because you're no longer their mule, no longer their sponge, no longer their quiet disposal for chaos. Now, you're a mirror, and mirrors terrify those who hate their reflection. They'll accuse you. You've become too serious, too distant, too intense. But the truth? You've become aware. You've stopped explaining yourself, stopped apologizing for silence, stopped smiling to keep others comfortable. You've seen what most miss. That empathy without awareness is suicide, and the dark empath doesn't walk into traps. They build fortresses. You can sense intention before words arrive. You feel manipulation like a drop in temperature. You walk away without warning, because you don't need proof anymore. You've seen enough. This isn't paranoia. This is pattern recognition. Those who call you cold are simply frustrated they can't control you. Those who call you too sensitive are terrified of how accurately you see them. And those who think they fooled you? You saw through them long ago. You just chose silence over confrontation, because silence cuts deeper than any argument. Your emotional intelligence is no longer a bridge. It's a fortress, a filter, a shield against the invisible wars of daily life. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being heart-smart. You haven't lost your feelings. You've locked them behind a wall with a code only you know. You watch people first. Let them reveal themselves. And when they think they've read you, that's when you vanish from their script entirely. You are not their story. You are the editor. You no longer beg to be seen. You choose who sees you. And in that choice lies your sovereignty. The dark empath doesn't need to manipulate, because they already know the ending of the game. They don't need to control others, because they've mastered themselves. And in this brutal world, that is the most dangerous power of all. There comes a moment when the war ends, not because the attacks stop, but because you stop reacting. You are not broken. You are not angry. You are finished. Done playing the role of sacrifice. This is when the dark empath ascends, from emotional survival to emotional sovereignty. You've studied human nature like a surgeon studies flesh. You've seen the betrayals hidden in handshakes, the sharp teeth hiding behind sweet smiles, the poison disguised as promises. You've given more chances than anyone deserved, but not anymore. Now you move in silence. Now you walk like shadow. Now you build a world no one enters without earning it. Not by begging, not by guilt, not by manipulation, but by proving. You no longer explain your absence. You no longer defend your walls. You no longer participate in drama, noise, or guilt games. Because you've mastered detachment. They say you've grown cold. That you've changed, and they're right. You've evolved. You no longer chase people. You chase purpose. You chase clarity. You chase peace. You've turned empathy inward, and now it protects you, not poisons you, because you've learned the harsh truth. Being good is dangerous when the world feeds on the good. So you stopped bleeding to prove your worth. You stopped explaining yourself to be understood. You stopped walking through fire for those who wouldn't crawl an inch for you. And that is freedom. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that screams. But the kind that walks away in silence. No closure. No announcement. Just the absence of chains. You've learned to smile without trusting. To listen without absorbing. To love without losing yourself. That is the final form of the dark empath. Not someone who plays games, but someone who refuses to be played. You don't expose people. You let them expose themselves. You don't fight for your place. You command the room with presence, not noise. They feel it. The weight, the quiet authority, the unreadable eyes. You've become the mirror that reflects nothing back, unless you choose to. You are no longer an open book. You are a locked manuscript, and only those who earn the patience, pain, and purity to read your pages will glimpse your truth. Most never will. And that's exactly how you want it. Because in your quiet world, you hear everything. You see everything. You predict everything. And that is why you are untouchable. You're not here to be liked, not here to be accepted. You are here to survive, evolve, and reign over your own reality. With empathy sharpened into intuition, with silence honed into power. They cannot understand you. They cannot control you. They cannot reach you. You've become what the world fears most. Someone who once cared deeply, but no longer needs anyone to breathe. You've become the ghost they cannot haunt, the soul they cannot seduce, the heart they cannot break. They told you kindness was strength, that empathy would save the world, that goodness would be rewarded. But you've lived long enough to know the truth. The world does not reward purity. It exploits it. The world does not protect the sensitive. It crucifies them. And those who feel most deeply are always the first left bleeding. You tried it their way. You gave. You forgave. You stayed loyal even when it burned you alive. And what did it buy you? Betrayal, disappointment, loneliness. So you stopped trying to be a hero, and you became your own weapon. That is the meaning of the dark empath, not evil, not manipulative, not heartless, but strategic. Aware, dangerously self-controlled. You didn't lose your empathy. You stopped wasting it. You read people without giving them a map back to your soul. You trained your mind to feel everything but obey nothing. You mastered the art of silence, and most importantly, you stopped apologizing for your strength. Because here's the truth. No one says aloud. The world doesn't care about intentions. It only respects leverage, presence, and power, and the dark empath carries all three. You don't scream for attention. You command it by existing. You don't manipulate. You let people reveal themselves, then act accordingly. You don't fear abandonment. You prefer solitude to blind loyalty. You don't beg. You observe. You don't chase. You attract. And when you walk away, it's final. This is not cruelty. This is immunity. You are still capable of love, but not blind love. Still capable of kindness, but bounded by razors. Still capable of feeling, but never enslaved by feeling. You've turned pain into armor, silence into steel, empathy into sword. You are the wolf among the flock, invisible until it matters. And by then, it's too late. They will misunderstand you. They will call you cold, distant, calculating. Let them. You don't need validation from those who once tried to bury you. You're no longer fighting to belong. You're building a throne from the rubble of betrayal. This is your power. You didn't become this by accident. You were forged in chaos, sharpened by betrayal, hardened by silence. You don't stand alone because you couldn't belong. You stand alone because you refuse to kneel. You see the world as it is, a battlefield, a theater of masks, a game played by those too blind to know their pawns. But you walk through it all with open eyes, unbothered, unbreakable. That is why you're dangerous. Because you feel everything and still play to win. Because you know the dark and don't run from it. Because you have empathy, but not for fools. You are no longer trying to save the world. You're building your own. And if you've ever felt too soft, too emotional, too broken to survive, this is your sign. You don't need to erase who you are. You need to stop giving your power to those who never deserved it. Become the Dark Empath, the one who listens, the one who understands, the one who never forgets, the one who no longer asks, only acts, the one who rises alone and never falls again. Because this world doesn't need more smiles. It needs more people who know pain and still walk forward. Who wield empathy like a sword, not a leash. Who carry silence like a crown. If this spoke to you, stay, because the next lesson will cut deeper than this one. You are the Dark Empath, and the world has no defense against you.